A bald man with a head full of scars was pacing incessantly in the prison cell. It turned out he was our bald hero who had been serving a 10-year sentence and today marked his release day. He gazed intently at the faded picture on the wall, a photo taken with his late brother by The Rock, 10 years ago. His brother had been mercilessly killed by a group of villains, and every passing day, our hero had longed to be free to seek revenge. The Rock was brought in to meet the prison warden, who followed the principle of allowing the prisoner to have one final interrogation before being set free. Our bald hero had never backed down from anyone in prison, and till now, no prisoner dared to even touch a strand of his hair. The warden attempted to convince The Rock to return to the path of righteousness after his release, but these words seemed to have no effect on him. He observed each passing second, counting down to his moment of freedom. As soon as he stepped out of the prison gates, The Rock immediately discarded the business card handed to him by the warden. He was told to seek the person whose name was written on the card in times of trouble, but with his stubborn nature, no one could alter his determination to avenge his brother. The Rock swiftly made his way towards an abandoned warehouse. Here, someone had prepared a brand new car for him and the dossier of the person who needed to be eradicated from the face of the earth. Immediately after that, he stepped on the gas pedal and drove recklessly towards an office building. Without saying a word, he stormed inside, frantically searching for the person mentioned in the dossier, leaving everyone bewildered about what was happening. He stopped when he saw a man making a phone call, his bald head giving away his fear as he stood up, unable to utter a word before he was shot dead by our protagonist. Ignoring the security cameras on the wall, he walked away calmly, while the police arrived at the scene for investigation. A flirty detective in his prime was sent down to assist Lily, who seemed to have a dislike for flirtatious detectives, given his unprofessional demeanor. As for the bald man, he went to the broker's office. Previously, when he was in the closet, The Rock had bribed him to track down the whereabouts of those who had killed his brother. Today, he was there for another round of information gathering on the remaining culprits. However, the broker demanded more money, puffing up his face and threatening him with a tall guy, resembling a wrestler, like my boss giving someone a beatdown. The tall guy stepped forward, asking him if he knew who he was. But as soon as he saw the tattoo on The Rock's arm, the tall bodyguard immediately apologized and quickly bid farewell without setting another appointment. Because if he stayed, he would probably get punched and lose some teeth for recognizing the tattoo on The Rock's arm, representing all the mob bosses The Rock had eradicated from the face of the earth. At this moment, the broker trembled like a freshly bathed dog, and the two testicles relentlessly collided with each other. Well, she teased him a little bit, but she didn't intend to take any more money from him. She had already prepared all the documents he needed. Besides, she did it out of goodwill, so he could take back the money he had given her. On the other side, the police quickly identified the main culprit through the security camera footage. The Rock, just released from prison, joined the police's most wanted list after only one day. 10 years ago, he and his brother Gary participated in a bank robbery. The Rock took the driver's seat to escape, relying on his street racing experience to quickly get all of them to safety. However, not long after, they were attacked by a gang who wanted to know where they had hidden the stolen money. In order to protect his brother's life, The Rock revealed the location, but the gang didn't keep their word and killed Gary in front of him. They didn't intend to let the two of them live, and one of them even secretly recorded The Rock being shot in the head. The Rock was quickly taken to the hospital, but the doctors were helpless and believed he wouldn't survive. However, he miraculously woke up as if nothing had happened. It seems the director wasn't ready to let him rest in peace. The Rock now relies on a metal brace to stabilize his spine. The only motivation The Rock has now is to seek revenge for his brother. His next target is the person who filmed the incident. 10 years have passed, but this perverted old man hasn't changed a bit. The plan is to disguise himself as a weak old man and hire young girls to come to his house to harass. Just as he was preparing to commit the crime, The Rock kicked the door open. The perverted man was surprised to see his bald head. After a few moments, he obediently lay on the floor and couldn't get up anymore. After easily achieving a double kill, The Rock quickly left the crime scene. As The Rock stepped out, a hitman appeared at the end of the hallway. He was secretly hired to kill The Rock. Just as the hitman was about to shoot, a little girl suddenly stepped in, foiling his plan. The Rock noticed and pushed the child inside, then pointed the gun and fired. Fearless, he continued walking and shooting while the hitman cowered behind a corner. After gathering his composure, the hitman rushed out with his gun, but the hallway was empty as The Rock had already driven away years ago. Then he drove to his ex-girlfriend's house and from a distance, he could tell that she had gotten married and had a very happy family. It made sense because who would wait for someone who had been in and out of jail? The Rock didn't want to ruin his ex-girlfriend's life, but before he went to jail, she had become pregnant with his child, so he wanted to meet his son. However, his girlfriend told him that after he went to jail and insisted on cutting ties with her, she thought she couldn't raise the child alone, so she secretly had an abortion. Upon hearing this, The Rock could only stand there stunned, as his last glimmer of hope was cruelly extinguished. He now had no other distractions and only the desire for revenge for his brother remained. That night, at a nightclub, a gatekeeper was working unaware that someone was watching him. And who else could it be but the main protagonist with long hair? The gatekeeper was the next target that needed to die. Back then, he was the cold-blooded person who ruthlessly killed Gary. Even after 1,000 lifetimes, The Rock would remember that cruel face vividly. He followed his trail for hours and had the opportunity to corner him in the restroom. The gatekeeper could tell who was behind him through the mirror, and upon seeing The Rock's expression, he knew that only one person was going to survive today. Immediately, they both engaged in a heated fight. Although they were roughly similar in physicality, it was clear that the gatekeeper was not on par with the main protagonist. With just a few strikes, The Rock had his opponent knocked out on the floor. In fear of dying, the gatekeeper used psychological warfare by mentioning that there was still a son left from his ex-girlfriend. He then requested to make a call to his son to let him know that he had a failed father. Unexpectedly, The Rock fell for the trick and softened his heart, sparing the gatekeeper. But the next day, The Rock overheard a news report on the radio. The gatekeeper had been taken to the hospital for emergency treatment by the police. Thinking of his brother's death, The Rock immediately turned the car around and sped towards the hospital, only to find the whole place surrounded by the police. How do you feel about the fact that even The Rock has come here to eliminate witnesses, so my fuck was already waiting for his prey? Despite knowing this, the protagonist calmly enters as if it were an empty place. He proceeds directly to the emergency room and squeezes the neck of the bodyguard to send him to reunite with his ancestors. The police officer hears the gunshot and quickly abandons his meal to rush to the emergency room, but The Rock has already left. The officer immediately chases him down to the basement. As soon as he sees The Rock, the officer shoots with determination towards him, but The Rock swiftly turns around and retaliates, forcing his opponent to take cover immediately. In a flash, the detective is at the mercy of the protagonist, with a gun pointed straight at his head, facing a remorseless killer. The detective has no choice but to kneel down and await his death. However, when he looks up, The Rock is nowhere to be found. Historically, The Rock only kills those who deserve to die, not innocent people. When The Rock leaves, the assassin from the previous day receives information from an anonymous source. He swiftly drives his racing car to approach The Rock's vehicle, and both are caught in a high-speed chase, causing chaos along the way. The protagonist cleverly uses a truck as a shield to force the assassin's car, preventing him from escaping. If not for quick braking, he would have been crushed by the crushed car. Once he regains composure, he realizes that The Rock is pointing a gun straight at him. However, instead of killing him, The Rock shoots the tire, but unexpectedly, the wretched man, unaware of the situation, directly shoots and hits The Rock's neck. Sensing the danger, The Rock quickly drives away but is severely injured and takes refuge in a house. He then points the gun at his biological mother's head. He came here to seek revenge against his biological father because he suspected that he had betrayed the two cousins. His mother tells him that their father passed away a few days ago, and she cannot believe that he would betray his own children like that. The person he loved the most was his older brother, The Rock, and hearing his mother's words confirms that it is true. But if it wasn't their father who informed him, then who could it be? He doesn't have time to think because there are still many debts that need to be repaid. The next morning, the protagonist drives to the location of the next target. That is a church. The person who participated in the assassination of Gary that year then turned around and became a preacher. He spoke eloquently on the pulpit, impressing the people below with his moral teachings, and they applauded and praised him. But the moment he saw The Rock, he stood there, stunned. The preacher said he had been waiting for this day for 10 years. After committing the crime that year, he deeply regretted it and decided to give up his violent ways and preach to those who had lost their way. However, The Rock did not want to spare the life of the man who killed his brother, and he did not believe that an evil person could truly change. Knowing that he was about to return to God, the preacher calmly knelt down to read the Bible. The Rock thought for a while and decided to shoot, but he aimed elsewhere. He spared the preacher's life because he had repented and sought redemption for his sins. He gave the preacher a chance to start over. Now that all his enemies had been eliminated, The Rock no longer had any worries. He sat alone in the church, looking at a photo taken with his brother, and then looked up at the ceiling, questioning whether what he did was right or wrong. Just then, the assassin appeared with a gun, intending to finish off The Rock. But he showed no fear or resistance. Seeing this, the assassin asked why he didn't kill him earlier. The Rock gently replied that there was no enmity between them, so why resort to killing? The assassin's wounded pride was triggered even more, as he had never been defeated by anyone in his life as an assassin. And now he was being humiliated time and time again by someone who couldn't even grow a decent beard. Angry, he told The Rock that he still had another person to seek revenge on, the mysterious person who hired him, the person who knew the whole story that year and hired him to kill the protagonist. Just as the assassin was about to act, the detective in a flowered shirt appeared, threatening the assassin with a gun to lower his weapon. But unexpectedly, he fired a shot at The Rock's head. It turned out that this detective was the mysterious person who hired the assassin, and he was also the one who shot The Rock from behind back then. The assassin asked the detective why he had to do that, as The Rock didn't know his true identity and there was no need to intervene. The detective replied that the informant was the girlfriend of The Rock's brother, and with The Rock's abilities, sooner or later he would be investigated. It was better to take action rather than wait for death. Finally, the assassin refused to accept payment from the detective and left hastily because he hadn't killed his target. Going through this experience, he decided to give up being a murderer and turned away from it. As for the detective, he called his colleagues to let them know that he had successfully caught the fugitive. While waiting for the police to arrive at the scene, he was shot in the head and fell to the ground. It turned out that The Rock was still alive, thanks to a metal plate in his head that saved him. Seeing that the enemy was still alive, he didn't hesitate to shoot again to ensure his death. The film ends with The Rock leaving the scene, and where he goes next remains a mystery. This is the end of the movie. Goodbye and see you all again.